Good day, my dear students. I am Sir Eric Alharo, and today I will be discussing one of the topics included in the subject Understanding Culture, Society, and Politics.
Shall we have breakfast together?
Throw your hands up if you with it, drop it.
At the end of the lesson, you should be able to examine human responses to emerging challenges in contemporary societies. Before we start our discussion, you need to prepare your module in Understanding Culture, Society, and Politics, Quarter 2, Module 6. You also need your ballpen for you to be able to answer all of the activities included in the module. Before we proceed, let us go back with some of the important concepts about society, on social stratification and social inequality, which relate our discussion. According to Marx's theory, social stratification is created by differing economic capacities among people and the relationship to the means or the factors of production. If you still remember, in social stratification, we have three social classes. The first social class is what we call as the lower class. Some of the people includes in the lower class are the farmers, indigent families, and underemployed. The second social class that we have is known as the middle class. The middle class includes mostly of the professionals, just like the lawyers, doctors, the dentists, and many other professions. The third social class that we have is known as the upper class. In this social class includes most of the people who are prolific and successful in their respective areas. This includes the investors and stockholders. In society, two distinct classes can be created which feature those who own the factors or means of production and those who sell their labor in the production chain to those who own the means. This basically creates the employer-employee relation in most societies. Apart from these two distinct groups, Karl Marx also recognized two other groups that do not belong to either but are somehow related to two large groups. The first group is known as the petite bourgeoisie, those who own some of the means of production, but their profit-earning power is not enough to earn them a position among the bourgeoisie. The second group is known as the underclass. It includes those who have no social status. Another important information about social stratification is that it is a form of inequality that occurs due to the inherent differences between human beings. Some inherent human differences include the race, the gender, the age, and economic capacity, among others. other distinguishing features. The differentiation is done to mark one group as superior over another, which leads to social classes arranged in hierarchies. Again, as we all know, we have three social classes. The first one, we have the lower class. The second one, the middle class. And the third one, the upper class. After discussing the two distinct groups proposed by Karl Marx, which are the bourgeoisie and underclass, let me assess if you really understand the difference between the two groups. Let us answer, let's have a drill on page 4 of Module 6. What we're going to do is to write letter A if the individual or group of people belongs to bourgeoisie. And then, you're going to write letter B if the individual or group of people belongs to underclass. After answering the drill, you may check your answers using the answer key at the end part of the module. After answering let's have a drill, let us have another activity. What are you going to do is to read the situations and answer the follow-up questions. Question. As a citizen, how are you going to protect, conserve, and restore our environment? Very good. Your answer is correct. Now, let us read and analyze situation number 2. Question for situation number 2 is, how can you make OFW feel that they are special and valuable? Very good. Your answer is correct. After knowing the most essential competency that you need to learn about this topic, answering the pretest, answering the drill, and analyzing situations and answering questions, now we are ready to have our discussion of our topic, which is all about new challenges in contemporary societies. Let us analyze the quotation by Wendy Carlos. As human beings, we do change, grow, adapt, perhaps even learn and become wiser. The quotation by Wendy Carlos only means that the only permanent thing in this world is change. As time goes by, many changes are happening in our society. But because of the experiences that we gain, we can able to learn and adapt from those changes. A progressive society requires social change. However, there are challenges which we must overcome in order to ensure this. Meaning to say that every individual must be able to adapt to the changes that happen in our society. With the society's development comes a new challenge that everyone must face. Everyone must realize that responding to social, cultural, and political change has a great impact to the society. Many of the changes that people have experienced throughout the history come with numerous challenges which must overcome. It is for this reason that people devise various ways of dealing with the social, cultural, and political change through involvement and collective actions. These actions are what we need in order to respond to the social, cultural, and political changes that are happening. When we say social change, in anthropology and sociology, it refers to the modification of mechanism, means of method, or systems within the structure. Social change is characterized by the following. First, alteration in social relationships. Second, social order. Third, social symbols. The fourth, social organizations. And then the last one, value system or rules of behavior. Here are the examples of social change. First, Industrial Revolution. The second example is the abolition of slavery. The third example is the civil rights movement. And then the last one is the women's suffrage movement. Another change that we can observe in our society is what we call as the cultural change. Cultural change could be seen in the practices, institutions, technology, societal laws, ethos or mores, or moral norms, manners, value systems, customs, traditions, habits, beliefs, arts, music, and literature. Some of the examples of cultural change are changes in the manner of choosing a spouse and adopting new lifestyle. Another change that we must observe in our society is what we call as the political change. Political change denotes alterations in the governmental aspect of our society, such as the changes in the administrative, executive, judicial, legislative, and constitutional processes, systems, and structures. Two common examples of political change are constitutional amendments and shift from presidential to parliamentary form of government. Another change that we definitely feel is most especially in our environment is what we call as the global warming or climate change. When we say global warming, it is generally described as the gradual increase in the average temperature of the Earth's atmosphere and its oceans. It is mainly caused by the heat being trapped in the Earth, known as the greenhouse effect. This environmental change is irreversible, meaning to say we cannot bring back the normal temperature before, and later would permanently change the Earth's climate. As such, climate change becomes a global concern of every nation, especially to those highly industrialized countries. Let us now proceed with the discussion about greenhouse gases and greenhouse effect. When we say greenhouse effect, it is the process wherein radiation from the Earth's atmosphere warms its surface to a temperature above what it would be in the absence of its atmosphere. It is caused by greenhouse gases. Some of the examples of greenhouse gases are the carbon dioxide, CFC or the chlorofluorocarbons, methane, nitrous oxide, and ozone. But take note of this class, even though greenhouse gases cause greenhouse effect, those gases are very important to maintain the normal temperature of our atmosphere. The amount of greenhouse gases in our atmosphere is greatly affected by human activities, such as burning of fossil fuels, burning of waste, and the smoke coming from different factories and different kinds of vehicles. As I mentioned, the amount of greenhouse gases in our environment is greatly affected by the human activities. Therefore, a responsible citizen of our country, we must be able to reduce the amount of greenhouse gases that we may produce. Here are some of the effects of climate change: rainfall patterns, surface temperature and formation of cyclones, coastal changes, water level changes, food productivity, forest cover, and then the last one is the desertification of lands. Here are some ways on how are we going to address our problem about global warming. First, current adaptation strategies. Humans have to strategize in order to adapt to the impacts of climate change. We can adapt through minimizing our carbon emission and adopt a more environmentally friendly methods of living, such as electric-based transportation. However, adaptation alone is not expected to be able to cope up with the environmental effects of climate change, since some of the effects of global warming are irreversible already. The second way on how are we going to address the problem about global warming is vulnerability of populations to climate change. Human population is vulnerable to climate change caused by the different factors such as pollution, conflicts, or epidemics. We can engage on sustainable development activities such as recycling, reforestation, use of renewable sources of energy to help human societies reduce their vulnerability to climate change. The third way on how are we going to address the problem about global warming is mitigation and adaptation. Mitigation measures to reduce greenhouse gases emission can help to avoid, reduce, or delay impacts of climate change to ensure that the adaptation capacity of people is maximized in its full efficiency. Since global warming is a global issue, we have different international agreements that can mitigate the adverse effect of global warming. The first one is the UNFCCC. UNFCCC stands for United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. It is an international environmental treaty adopted on May 9, 1992 and opened for signature at the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro from June 3 to 14, 1992. UNFCCC objective is to stabilize greenhouse gas concentrations in the atmosphere at the level that would prevent dangerous anthropogenic interference with the climate system. The parties to the convention have met annually from 1995 in conferences of the parties or the COP to assess progress in dealing with the climate change. Another international agreement that can mitigate the adverse effect of global warming is the Kyoto Protocol. In 1997, Kyoto Protocol was concluded and established legally binding obligations for developed countries to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions in the period 2008 to 2012. Another international agreement is known as the Paris Agreement. In 2015, Paris Agreement was adopted governing emission reductions from 2020 through commitments of countries in nationally determined contributions, lowering the target to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Although the climate problem will not be solved without the government responses, various private sectors such as business corporations, advocacy groups, and other non-governmental institutions are actively engaging to reduce the cause of climate problem, specifically the global warming. Accordingly, the private sectors are particularly important because policy is shared responsibility between the public and private sectors of the society. The private sector responses, also called the private climate governance, can be collaborated with the government responses. The next topic is all about the transnational migration, overseas Filipino workers or OFWs. Since the late 20th century, the rise of globalization has changed the concept of migration. When we say migration, it is the transfer of living of an individual from one place to another place. Improvement in transportation, communication, and financial systems made it easier for the people to migrate to work into another country, but still provide for their families in their home countries by sending their earning home. Transnational migration is a global phenomenon that is mounting scope, complexity, and impact. Migration is both a cause and effect of broader development processes and an intrinsic feature of our globalizing world. As we all know, many Filipinos go to other countries to have a better salary. Filipinos often have the mindset that when they go abroad, they would be able to support and sustain the needs of the families away from the poverty. Overseas Filipino workers, or also known as the OFWs, is a term often used to refer to a Filipino migrant workers, people with Filipino citizenship who reside in another country for a limited period of employment. The sacrifices of the overseas Filipino workers made just to provide a better life for their families earned them the title of the nation's Bagong Bayani or New Heroes. With regards to the contribution of the OFWs, in recent years, the improvement of the economy often attributed to the remittances further cemented their mark in the Philippines. According to the Philippine Overseas Employment Administration, or the POEA, there were a total of 1,844,406 OFWs in the year 2015. 1,437,875 are land-based and 406,531 are sea-based. As I mentioned earlier, OFWs are known as the new heroes. We should empower the rights of all of the OFWs. It is because they face a lot of challenges as they seek a better opportunity abroad. Because of difference in social and cultural structures of other countries, OFWs are prone to violence manifested through labor exploitation, abuse of employers, leading to some legal issues. Despite the difficulties faced by the OFWs, they are persistently pursuing to work abroad to lift their families from poverty. Other OFWs have chosen to work abroad for better salary, which the local employers could not provide them. Still, there are OFWs who are forced to work abroad due to the underemployment caused by the job mismatch in work opportunity and worker skills in the country. Nonetheless, there are few non-governmental organizations that continuously provide supports system to OFWs to protect the rights and assist them to fulfill their employment goals while working abroad. And that's it. We're done with our discussion. Let me know if you really understand the lesson that I have discussed earlier. For me to be able to assess your understanding, you're going to answer Activity 1 entitled Explore Your Analytical Mind, and then you're going to answer the 4 questions on page 11 of Module 6. The first question is, what are the advantages and disadvantages of having greenhouse gases in the atmosphere? Very good. Your answer is correct. The second question is, how does global warming and climate change affect human and environment? Very good. Your answer is correct. The third question is, the fourth question is, what are the pros and the cons of being an OFW in relation to social stratification and inequality? Very good. Your answer is correct. The next activity that you're going to do is activity number 2. Activity 2 entitled Test Your Creativity. You're going to make a slogan, a poem, or a song using the themes that I'm going to give. The first theme is saving the earth, cooling down the world. The second theme is Filipino abroad, economic heroes of our country. For me to be able to give an appropriate score of your output, you need to consult the rubrics on page 12 of Module 6. After doing Activity 2, the next activity that you're going to do is the games for brains. You're going to fill in the blanks the appropriate words or phrase that will complete the thought of the sentence. You're going to do what I have learned on page 13 of Module 6. The next activity can be found on page 14 of Module 6. The activity is under What I Can Do. Activity 1 is entitled SPEC Analysis. You're going to read the situation about COVID-19. For the instruction, you need to explain how the statement above affects the cultural, social, and political settings of the Philippines brought about by the COVID-19. You may use the table on page 14 as your pattern for you to be able to answer or to do the activity. The next activity under What I Can Do is Activity 2 entitled Challenge Accepted. What are you going to do is to put a check mark if you honestly doing the following activities. The another one is Activity 3, Mind Mapping. You may consult page 15 of Module 6. You need to create a mind map about distance learning that we have in the educational system. You need to consider its significance, the so-called new normal. Life amid COVID-19 pandemic. Share your thoughts and feelings to your class using your output. Another activity under What I Can Do is Activity 3. Activity 3 is entitled Mind Mapping. What are you going to do is to create a map about the distance learning that we have in the educational system. You need to consider its significance to the so-called new normal life amidst of COVID-19 pandemic. Share your thoughts and feelings to the class using the mind map on page 15 of Module 6. For your assessment, you're going to choose one social issue listed on page 16 of Module 6. and you're going to make a reflection paper. For me to be able to check or to give appropriate score, you may consult the rubrics on page 16 of Module 6. And that's the end of our lesson. I hope you learned and see you on our next episode. Goodbye!